but it is. It certainly is in this society where kind of sexism is prevalent in either side, because if you're a man, you're a rapist on this is why, you know, Gamergate is all terrible sexism and misogyny, which was in this woman Felicia. That's like sexism up to 11 as far as feminists are concerned. But when you look at it from a certain point of view,
the reason that we have such entrenched racism and sexism in the world today is that basically feudalism, a lot of abuse online, a lot of racism and sexism and homophobia and stuff online, because it's a very I am by no means a fucking paragon when it comes to issues of race or sexism or anything like that.
because I feel it needs clarifying. Feminism, sexism, with regards to fiction. Any medium you want to choose. An effective part of the fucking battlefield. Okay, right? Yes, there has been sexism. Yes, there has been at certain periods in of it. We're all so obsessed with racism and sexism that we don't see the real racism and sexism going on. Because if you fucking break these things, we all die. And so, in this day and age, sexism and racism isn't of what defines us. So, you know, I mean, there are elements of sexism towards women that are protective of women, you know. Racism is a tool. Sexism is a tool. Homophobia is a tool. You kind of don't want me to. And it's this whole kind of a metaphor for how shitty sexism is, while at the same time, you know, they are women. All are treated equally under the law. And you cannot tell me that there is not a bias and sexism in our law when it's, you know, like homosexuality, on issues of racism, on sexism, on the rights of the transsexuals, is because all this shit doesn't affect dimorphism. Yeah, really is not necessarily an indicator that that sexism is inbred. And indeed, you know, it's entirely right that we counter the sexism that says that women can't be leading actors, that the black people. I have experienced sexism against women and sexism against transgender people because people are thick and can't tell the fuck.
Even if you don't think that sexism is that bad today, right? Then there have been points in time when
never be in trouble ever, because then sexism. But I'm not saying that. I'm not saying, no, you can never have a transgender woman kind. You know, I mean, I know that, you know, that sexism still goes on, that rape is a massive, massive issue, and
we don't bother to explain how the very sexism that fucks over women also fucks over men, because thanks to sexism,
that way, but I don't think it is a major issue of sexism. And then
actually, like, stand up for sexism when it's like Caroline Lucas got the same number of votes, got the same constituencies,
are the epitome of fucking patriarchal, misogynistic sexism. You know, they are just the epitome of misogyny. Misogyny is the hatred of women. And this isn't like racism or sexism, because sexism is just in this day and age. And there, sexism seems to be so prevalent and racism seems to be such a massive issue. And there's this always idea that yes, you have sexism, but you also have a belief that it is equal. Because documentary equivalent. It feels like the patriarchy saying, yeah, but dudes, sexism has been really bad for us too. You know?
Victims of rape are not acknowledged. They are not given any kind of treatment. Thanks to sexism against women, it is not possible. Fucks over women also fucks over men, because thanks to sexism, thanks to the patriarchy, thanks to sexism against women,
and I am anti-sexism, pro-equality, but anti-being called a sexist. Myself a feminist, but I do believe that there are problems with sexism and they need to be solved and things could be more equal. Okay.
Still was the old white guy. Still was the bigotry and racism and sexism. Still was the thousands of white man sci-fi superheroes, but
a couple of right-wingers will join. And then I'll say, yeah, you know, sexism isn't going to be tolerated here, and they'll fuck off, or they'll get banned.
is seen as a victim, and so therefore a man can never be seen as a victim. Thanks to sexism against women,
the issues of what counts as sexism in a work of fiction for a moment, because other people have done that job of sexism, then you cannot yourself be seen to perpetrate sexism. You just cannot. It is just not right. If you are I'm gonna do a series pointing out how all this sexism in these video games is fucking wrong. They take my kind of casual approach to purging. Quite a lot of it is very heavy on the sexism angle. Because you have Halat, which is basically an African guy becomes impotent. That's how you conquer sexism. You conquer sexism by letting the men be informed by the women where it counts on the page. Talking about, you know, sexism, you're talking about the rights of people who want to be treated like pets. That is sexism, and it's not fair. And yes, I know neither is murder and rape and big racism and sexism, that we don't see the real racism and sexism going on behind the scenes. Okay? It's all just white men saying,
right? Trans people have to deal with sexism, misogyny, misandry, you know, they have to deal with the fact
because of the actual genuine like sexism and patriarchy in the publishing system. Okay? Because they serve as an analogy for sexism in society and how they interact with, you know, men and evils of patriarchy and sexism and whatever you want to call the great big steamroller treating women like shit.
if you want to know a genuine example of sexism against men, it's the idea that men can't be raped because
You, however, are a female feminist. What you're basically saying is, I am annoyed by sexism. Oh, by the way, I am a target of I am a gender fluid characters, which, to be honest, might be a good way to break through the whole sexism barrier thing, because
of, you know, not enough women in the workforce. You also have this thing that because of the inherent sexism of the system,
but wrong about the fact that sexism cancels out sexism. It doesn't. And it never fucking will. All it does is causes who genuinely believe entirely in horrific sexism and horrific homophobia and horrific just abuse.
there have been points in time when sexism was so much worse. When women couldn't work. When women didn't.
racism or sexism, because sexism is just discrimination based on sex, you know. Hatred of women it's the big. We need more men reading women's work. 'Cause that's how you conquer sexism. You conquer sexism by letting the men.
And so you have this inherent sexism in the system of based on feudalism, of, you know, not enough women. Racism, we're gonna crack down on hate speech, we're gonna crack down on sexism, we're gonna do a whole lot of stuff.
Is in terms of the armor. I want to see if there is any sexism in Skyrim. Because I'm kind of curious.
What your perspective is, it is undeniable that sexism still continues, right? There are parts of the world where
Therefore, there's still kind of a deep-rooted level of sexism and sexualization of women.
Doctor Who is oblique in the world of the Farshnake, and then you get to speak out about the sexism, and then you get to
ludicrous statement in the world, but sexism much? Oh, we can send the men off to die, but now we'll keep the women. Just gonna see, oh, the BBC has said that there is sexism going on against these people. I guess that's a big problem. And says, oh no, but this is sexism. This is sexism here, Governor. I mean, never mind that this is. And I have tackled transphobia. So now let's tackle sexism. I realised I tackled the phobias.
So we have this core problem in society of sexism left over in capitalism from the days of feudalism. Okay?
Please just handing them bullet points with weaknesses. This is why actually I feel like sexism seems such a big issue on the internet.
it's not about sexism, but it is gonna be kind of. It's basically a all-women book.
I mean, of course, none of this is to say that sexism is not a big problem, and sexism is a big problem. And the thing is, I am annoyed by sexism. Oh, by the way, I am a target of sexism. That to the fucking trolls on the internet. Okay, so let's talk about sexism, because sexism and misogyny. It's funny how sexism is the word that, you know, the credit or what have you. You know, instead people cry sexism when establishment supporting figures. Well, no, you know, it's kind of like another extension of sexism, except instead of someone sort of staring at you because, oh.
In order to kill off bigotry, in order to kill off sexism, you need to win people round.
That doesn't feed into racism and sexism and misogyny and transphobia. That's a good thing. Because is that essentially, well, we've beat sexism, so shut the fuck up. You know, so that even its area of complete douchebaggery, I almost think to a certain extent that that's where so much sexism in the modern world comes from, is because it's but a woman gets rape threats and that's news because sexism.
Inherit that racism, that sexism, transphobia, homophobia, blah 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 blah.
Shit as yet another shining example of all the fucking sexism and harassment around. So they don't react like we.
Sexism can be subtle. The sexism can be subtle in that it
within United Civilizations of the Multiverse, there is there is a patriarchal sense of sexism, both towards women and towards sylphs. I mean, and generally, Gamersgate is just the rampant sexism train, saying we will crush all of the women that tits because of Kelman syndrome. So you see, actually, I have experienced sexism against women and sexism against transgender. While the women aren't the focus of that story, the men's sexism and greed certainly is, and there are examples of,
and disgusting and sexist and racist and all this stuff. But
being told their opinions don't fucking matter because they are a guy. And that is sexism. That is sexism, and it's not black man and you know, that's problematic and racism or sexism, because no, Tasha Yar is shown to be very, very competent. Fucking bigoted. But nevertheless, racism and sexism and what have you are tools used by genuinely there is a significant amount of bias and sexism and genuinely discrimination against women in the work, exploiting the patriarchal sexism of a multiversal society, and is being kind of a creep. Serious moment of like, oh, I've got some sexism issues to work through when I actually decided to act. The left wing cannot suffer through social conservatism. Racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, these are genuinely, I think, one of the best ways that we can, you know, turn around sexism in the industry is to get more women writers and more women directors. I suppose the entire history of the patriarchy and of sort of sexism and racism can be traced back. Warped, internalized sort of sexism against the male demographic or whatever. There might be something, same constituencies as UKIP, or you know, they never complain about sexism when you're talking about, you know, hey, it's not racism because of freedom of speech. It's not sexism because there is an issue with ethics and games journalism. Yeah. Hey, fucker, you're going straight to prison. You know, like we treat it as though it is sexism or misogyny or stuff like that. Solidified understanding of what is and is not sexism in sort of smaller scenarios, right? Third wave feminism has kind of solidified sexism in society and how they interact with, you know, men and women, and how sexism plays into that too, and how you kind of, you know, then you get to sort of play with the fact that the sexism in Doctor Who is oblique in the world of the Farshnake, and you know, they are women in a world run by men, so there is also literal sexism. So it's, you know, in that case, I think it's kind of okay of it being used or whatever. It was women at the hands of men as a kind of, and malicious. Yes, sexism is bad, yo. Men are being bitch. So sexism is a very serious problem in the world. Particularly among the campaign against racism and sexism is just a new fucking gimmick for white men to say, well, you see, I am a feminist. Please, if you want to fight sexism, go out and buy a book or a film or
or any kind of fictional medium.
They have so many fucking issues to deal with, you know. You're talking about sexism, you're talking about self-discrimination, you're talking about...
It would be two birds with one stone, quite literally. And so, you know, that's feudalism enforces sexism because of pragmatism.
You don't need to feel sad, you don't need to feel shitty. Because this is the reason that sexism is such a big issue on the internet, because
It is an essay on the disgusting sexism of man. And also an
in which there are parts of the world where the sexism is fucking undeniable. You know, the fact that in Saudi Arabia, they literally
factors that I have just discussed are why we are seeing a resurgence in racism and sexism and misogyny at a time when
I'm single, who do I know, that's a woman and cool, but that's less sexism and more just...
in the media, because let's face it, the media is the last great bastion of sexism in the world, says the guy who
like an actual fucking answer and not just sexism. We shouted down like, I am reasonable. Talk to me.
which means that someone's gonna need to get eaten alive while you have sex with them. Oh. You know. So it's racism against whites, it's sexism against men. No, if you want to know a genuine example of sexism, to which people finding stuff funny plays into the apparent mass of sexism online, which is
so sexism, feminism. So basically, I have been having quite a detailed and in-depth discussion. Okay, if you are going to decry someone out of fucking sexism, then you cannot yourself be seen to perpetrate sexism. And yeah, I know that makes me sound like a sexist and stuff, but again, it's for